Hey there everyone and welcome to another Near Monsters video. In today's video we're going to go through all the fire monsters from 2021. This is another one of the longer ones because I'm not just going through the fire monsters, I'm also going through all the cycles, which we'll see in a second. So these are the long ones, the earth and the fire, and then the rest are going to be the short ones. So this video, after we go through the cycles, we're going to talk through we're going to have an overview and the themes in Fire to get an idea of what Fire is like. Then we'll go through the section of all the new monsters, the super epics, the legendaries, and then the mythics. And this year was the year of cycles, which is why this video is particularly long, talking through the cycles. And then the third section is going to be talking about the power level of the new monsters and some of the most notable additions. So there are links in the description to all the sections of this video. This particular video I am excited to do because Fire got loads of support this year. Fire was really, really good. So let's start off by looking at the cycles. The first cycle to look at is the Garden Fairies. Now they kind of work as individual monsters a bit. So throughout the series this year, I will be talking about them in their specific videos, for the element. Talking about them used by themselves, and at this part I'm going to only talk about them used together. So I'm not going to highlight which ones are super strong, like for example the Holy one is really good just by itself. I'm not going to be talking about that, I'm only going to be talking about them as a group. So what we've got here is a nice big slide where I've got an overview of how they work. But firstly I want to say the Garden Fairies, they were a little bit at a contentious point throughout the year because a lot of people had them. And the reason why, I would say, is because they were actually in the festivals throughout this year. So when I say this year, I'm talking about actually 2021. When I do this annual review, I'm doing it from the end of October to the end of October, but it was actually from January, February or something. The first Garden Fairy came out, that was the Earth one. And then basically every 6 weeks we got a new festival. Those were literally the festivals of the year, every 6 weeks. And every 6 weeks there was a new Garden Fairy in the festival. So these were 6 consecutive festivals over the course of the year, which is why I think a lot of people picked them up in those festivals and used them. And they were quite powerful when used together. So for a lot of the year, people were like, "Oh, Garden Fairies, they need to be nerfed. They're really strong." I actually think they're really quite well balanced. That they're strong but not overpowering. And yeah, they also, some of them have use by themselves, so they're kind of fun. I actually like them quite a bit. And I think in the long run, people will like them. They were just hating on them because of how it happened, how it played out over the course of the year. So the moveset. Over on the top left here, we've got the moveset. So each one of them has a jaw-hitting move, and then a vigor-piercing move. Vigor being they have to have 80% HP or more. That's kind of very unique to the Garden Fairies, at least for now. Vigor moves are just unique to them, I think. And so that is a piercing move. And then they have either a solo move or a Garden Fairy healing move. That is a 60-second heal a fellow Garden Fairy, so it's only useful when they are being used as a group. And you can't heal itself, you can only heal one of the other ones. So 4 of them actually have that. It's only 2 of them, the Fire and the Holy, which have solo moves. Then you've got a Garden Fairy move. So this requires having 2 or more Garden Fairies on the battlefield. Teammates, it's not like the Dolphins with Dolphin Bond, where it activates with the opponent's Dolphins. You have to have 2 on the battlefield, and then they can use their Garden Fairy move. So that's kind of more, specifically to this build. And then the secret skill is always a Vigor Piercing move, which is just 50 seconds. So that's really quite a nice payoff for having, if you have them at high HP, then when they get a turn, they can do something, just kill one enemy. And then they all have an aura passive that has some effect on the battlefield that's quite unique to them. We talked about the Earth one in the last video. Whenever a teammate dies, then the enemy team gets a bronze shell. You have the Shadow one, which damages enemies every turn. The Holy is the opposite, it heals your Garden Fairies every turn. So they're quite cool, aura passives. And that's the moveset, kind of what they have in common. That's their design. They then only have very small differences from that, the other passive. They've got a second passive, obviously, and that does something else. But that is kind of what they all share in common. And so in terms of gameplay, when you use them together, the way they work is they each heal each other for the Vigor moves. Like I just said, 4 of them have this 60-second heal on a teammate. I think it's unrestricted. We'll see in a second when we see the moveset. I don't think it's got a use limit. And so healing them up to get them to use their Vigor moves. And it's quite important to have that for some of these because without that, there isn't a huge amount of healing in the game. Like, you can heal teammates, but it's usually quite restricted or quite slow. There's nothing like a 60-second repeatable heal that you can do. So that's what they do together. And there is a lot of piercing, like I said. They've got both the Vigor piercing attack and also this secret skill is a piercing attack. So you get to see a lot of piercing on it, and in fact, the Shadow one, because it hurts enemies every turn, it kind of gives you pseudo-piercing because it removes any shields, instantly kills them from whole ground, so any kind of one-shot attack becomes like a piercing one-shot attack. So there's a lot of piercing going on with them, and then the one kind of downside of them is they have a lot of situational attacks, and that is the thing which I think keeps them quite balanced. Compared to some other things in the game, they do get stuck a little bit, and a couple of them are a little bit weaker, so you wouldn't necessarily want to use all 6 together. So if you are doing a Gun Fairy setup, there are only certain ones of them which will actually hit anything they like. Otherwise, they don't have generic kind of damage moves, a lot of them. So that's kind of generally how they fit, how they work, how you play with them. Let's talk about the key players on the right-hand side. So the top one, I would say, is the Holy One. This is probably the most important one if you're going to be playing with the Garden Fairies, because it is their stun absorber. It's very tanky, and it constantly heals them. It heals them by about 5% of their HP. It's 200 HP per turn. And bear in mind that you can skip with monsters, so you can just keep skipping behind things, and in PvP often people will want to skip back. So you can, say you have this Holy One, and you just you don't need to take a turn with it, so you skip behind the enemy, they then skip back, you've then had your original turn getting a turn on the Garden Fairy, you've then skipped to give them a turn, and then you've got the turn back. You've healed by 600 HP, which is like 15% of the HP. This Garden Fairy alone keeps them all on Vigor very nicely, Vigor being, you know, over 80% HP. It heals them up very quickly, so the enemy team has to kind of have their way to properly one-shot, rather than just hitting them down, because they'll just heal back up from any random little hit. So it does that on top of being a tanky stun absorber. The Holy One is the most important one. The next one I would say is the Shadow one, because that counters so many things with its aura passive, damaging all the enemies every turn. The damage is not like super high or anything, but it gets rid of, you know, stealth, shields, all that kind of stuff. Gives pseudo piercing for everyone. Very important for the overall strategy working to kill through the enemy team. Then the next one I would say is the Earth one. It's got the lowest conditional sweeping because it's got dual Confident Strike. And bear in mind, if you've got the Holy One, you're healing back up. You've got the other moves to heal heal them to full HP with just 60 seconds. So Garden Fairy Sunflower has very reliable sweeping compared to the other ones, and it's got also the strong Aura Punish of the passive, which is just really nice, because it means if they don't kill that one, if they're going for the other ones, they're going to get punished hard. And then the next one I would say is actually Water is even quite good. I think it's a slightly underrated one, but it has really nice support for them because it's got Insomnia with a 30-second Purify. So in terms of countering sleep and poison, that's really, really good. So yeah, the Water one is useful, and then it's just the Fire and Storm, which are actually not too great anyway. That are not so essential. So if you're going with the Garden Fairy setup, I would probably recommend that you want those 4 monsters that I just mentioned above, the key players. Those 4 together, it will be a very nice setup for the Garden Fairies, and should work very, very well. So let's move into talking about the individual monsters. And when I say individual, talking about them, using them in this group setting, not as a standalone monster. So first we have the Earth Garden Fairy Sunflower. This one's a strong one, so like I said on the previous slide, it's kind of the lowest conditioned sweeper, so dual Confident Strike, it does need to be on 100% HP for that, but we've got the means to heal it up, and then that should one-shot 2 things. Vigor Slayer Break is also a pretty low conditioned move, an enemy just having a kill, which will happen, that can then one-shot piercing at only 100 seconds, so those are decent moves. You also got Vigor Wallbreaker, which comes up. There are protectors around, so that's just an easy kill on a protector. So you've got some nice killer moves here, and it also has the powerful Aura passive, punishing the opponent if they kill anything else. It's slightly counterintuitive with the Garden Fairy move that wants to turn this into a protector, But I think having both of those, depending on the situation, you're going to make the choices that are best for that situation. So if the opponent doesn't have any kind of one-shot style moves, the taunt can be very good because Sunflower doesn't have any killer weaknesses, and if they hit it down below 70% HP, it gets max defense. So then becomes really tanky, and you can easily heal it up to then do those, Vigor Slayer Break and Dual Confident Strike again with the other Garden Fairies. So it can be a protector if you need it to be. Otherwise, it's a good sweeper for the group, and it's got a powerful passive. Just generally works very well and boosts the Garden Fairy setup. Next we have the Fire Garden Fairy, Garden Fairy Hibby. So this one is kind of the weakest of the bunch. I don't know, it's hard to say. This works in Garden Fairy setups for the healing entrance. So I think this works as, mainly you want to use this to kind of support the other ones to help them do their thing. And perhaps you want to maybe use it as a transition between the Garden Fairy setup and perhaps some poison without the fire in it, because this has solo Poison Eater. But yeah, so use it outside the front line. When it comes in, fully heals the Garden Fairies, which then obviously triggers their Vigor moves and stuff again. So if the opponent is managing to damage them or mess up what you're doing, and you're trying to perhaps heal them, well, Hibby will do that job for you quite well. So I think she does a decent job of supporting what they're doing. The Vigor Life Flip enemy is also quite nice, because that's, unconditional completely, and if you're using the Shadow one, that thing will then just kind of die off randomly to the Shadow monster, to the Shadow Garden Fairy. And Vigor Vengeance is very nice too. That's something which, even outside Garden Fairy setups, is going to be good. Only 130 seconds, it's a piercing kill. The only thing is, this needs to be on high HP, so for that reason you kind of want to use it with the other Garden Fairies, because they can heal her up. So this is the only one which cares about poison, unfortunately, and for that reason I don't think it fits beautifully well, but it can kind of work. The Vigor Vengeance is nice, the Vigor Life Flip enemy is nice, the healing aspect is nice, it's just the rest of it which, may be a bit slow or not particularly work. But yeah, good monster all round. Next we have the Holy Garden Fairy, and as I've said already, this is like the key monster, most of all, for the strategy, because it heals them all, and it's a super tanky stun absorber with no killer weaknesses. The Garden Fairy move here, the Shield All, I don't think is the most important aspect of it. The rest of the moveset is kind of better, but yeah, it may come up that you want to shield your Garden Fairies, because they're already at high HP. What's better than that is putting a shield on them so they stay at high HP more easily. But yeah, the Solo Stealth All I think is more powerful, only 80 seconds for that, and it's got a piercing kill with Vigor Fast Breaker on anything you like. So it can kill anything, it's super tanky, keeps all your Garden Fairies alive and working, and it's the stun absorber of the bunch. Without a doubt, like, the best Garden Fairy, I think, and works very nicely for supporting the strategy. It's kind of hard to pull off Garden Fairies if you don't have Garden Fairy Jasmine. So next we have the Shadow Garden Fairy, which is Garden Fairy Violet. If you hadn't guessed by now, they're all the names of flowers. But anyway, so Violet is... or flowers or colours? I don't know. Anyway, Violet, this, as I've said already, the Decay Aura, really big aspect of it, turns everything into piercing sweeping, sorry, pseudo sweeping. But also, I mean, a lot of them have piercing anyway, so it doesn't do a huge thing in that way. But what this does do is Garden Fairy Bloodthirst. That is, I would say, if you're using the Garden Fairies as a group, one of the main things you want to do is try and charge Garden Fairy Bloodthirst on this monster, because that's only 70 seconds to then kill anything you want, and is effectively piercing because of the Decay Aura. So Dual Slayer Bane you use if it's on low HP, because then it gets double attack, so it just easily one-shots anything. Vigor Double Piercing Blow, I personally am not the fondest of this, because it does make Garden Fairy Violet very easy to kill, and it also doesn't one-shot things, so it's kind of like a, not a move that you particularly want to use. What you really want to do is just go for the Bloodthirst. So you want to meet enemies with hold ground, and then use the other Garden Fairies to put them to hold ground, they die off to the Decay Aura, and then Violet can start sweeping with the Bloodthirst move. If you do go for the Vigor Double Piercing Blow, you probably want to have it lined up that you can then heal her straight back up with, the healing move on another Garden Fairy. But yeah, anyway, that's Garden Fairy Violet. The awesome sweeper if you can get her going. good support for them in general because of the Decay Aura is just so powerful. It counters some things too. And yeah, great monster. So the next one, the Storm one, this is Garden Fairy Lily. So this one, with the Garden Fairies, is where it really kind of, it does one thing, basically. The Garden Fairy move, True Hit. So if you meet Protectors, this is just a super hard counter, because you can actually just ignore the Protector, kill something else, and then just repeatedly kill whatever you like with this True Hit move. You know, if we use it with the Shadow one that we just had, then it's also like basically 70-second piercing killing. Yeah, this is a really, really hard counter to Protectors. But if there aren't Protectors, it's not so good, because the Speedy Aura doesn't really help the Garden Fairies. It only works on things which then come in once this is on the battlefield. So the setup you'll probably be using is in the front line with them all there already, so they don't come in accelerated. And then the Vigor Laser Blast, it both needs to be charged and also on high HP in order to work. It's faster than the normal Laser Blast, but you probably need 2 charges for it to actually one-shot things. So what you'll probably use this for in a Garden Fairy team is it being your primary healing monster. So using the Garden Fairy healing to heal the other ones up, and then if a Protector comes along, this is going to counter it beautifully. It can get 1 kill as well with the Stunbreaker move. But yeah, so you just kind of, you sit around, you heal up your teammates, you charge if there isn't one to heal, and then if a Protector comes along, you go, yes, paid off, I'm glad I put this in the team, and you then counter that. So it is one of the weaker ones, but it can be a heavy counter to Protectors. And lastly, we have Garden Fairy Pyrus, the water one. So this, I think, is the underrated one, because it's not so good outside of Garden Fairy teams. I think in Garden Fairy teams, it's more like an S tier in PvP. You can see I've got an A tier for, you know, kind of generally looking at it. So this is S tier for that, because it slows down enemies when they enter. It also is Insomnia with a 30-second Purify, so it protects you from sleep and poison very nicely. If you're using Jasmine to protect you from stun as well, the 2 of them can protect your team beautifully from those archetypes which are very common. And so between the Garden Fairy Purify and the Garden Fairy Healing, this can support the team very well. And then the other 3 moves are all killer moves, so they can only hit certain targets, but 2 of them are piercing. Counter Shock does very good damage. Doesn't one-shot Storm monsters, but you know, that's fair enough. And those 3 things are very, very common in PvP. You know, Chrono monsters, Stealth monsters, we see those loads, and then Stun monsters are also pretty common too. So the killer moves, they come up. This is not the best sweeper, but it is very good at support, and I think supports Garden Fairies as a group really well. The next cycle we have to talk about is the Dolphins. So these, we actually already had 3. We got the last 3 of this year, and a little bit of fun history for you. Dolphinix was in the game almost originally. I think it was either in the game originally or it came out only a few months after the release, and it was planned to be part of a pair. It was going to be Dolphinix and Dolfreeze, but they never released Dolfreeze. They waited until like 3 years of the game before they brought out Dolfreeze, and they said, oh, these are always meant to be a pairing. So this is like the original cycle. They made that pairing, they made Spectrafin, and then they decided to finish the cycle with the last 3 this year. So, fun bit of history for you. As they are not as cohesive as the Garden Fairies. We saw in the Garden Fairies they all had movesets that were very similar to each other. They wanted to be on high HP and they healed each other. The Dolphins, if we look at the moveset here on the left, there's not a whole lot that's similar between them. So they have dual hitting moves, kind of. You know, some of them don't have that, but they're mostly. Actually, think about it. I think, yeah, all of them have at least one dual hitting move, but that's kind of a theme between them. And then the main theme that you can kind of build around is a lot of them summon and use rocks, mostly at the back of the team, but also then there's Dolfreeze who summons them next in line. You know, they like rocks, they use them. You can build around them with other rock synergy stuff. A lot of people use them with, like, say, Terragar to summon 3 rocks like that. But yeah, the main reason to use them together is for Dolphin Bond. Only the Holy One and the Shadow One don't have this. It boosts their stats and gives them stun immunity, basically makes them stronger than Mythics. So it's just a case of, can you utilise the moveset properly for, you know, whether they'll perform well. Now, at this current moment in time, a lot of people are using these in PvP, and they're proving to be quite strong. So they may be tweaked since you know, when you're looking at this video now, they may work differently to how I'm talking about them in this video. So apologies in advance if that is the case, but I'll try and just talk about how they are now. So yeah, don't have a whole cohesive theme between them. They just have a bit of stuff to do with the rocks, and they're tanky and stun immune. So in terms of gameplay, they're just generally tanky. Basically, the Diamondoids from the Dolphreeze help them be even more tanky, because those Diamondoids get in the way, and you know, when they're already hard to get rid of, a lot of them don't have killer weaknesses. They then are going to have these Diamondoids in the way too. They're best mixed with other strong stun immunes. Like I said, they're not like fully cohesive. They don't care so much about what you're playing them with. So putting them with other strong monsters, they go in as generally strong monsters. But there are a couple of downsides to them, and that is that a lot of them have reliance on meeting monsters with killer weaknesses. So you can punish that, charge the blood move, or whatever it is like that. And if you don't meet enemies with killer weaknesses, they do suffer a bit. Some of them can't do a huge amount. And they also rely on their Dolphin Bond, some of them. So Dolphinix, the original fire one, that is not great without Dolphin Bond. Dolpharial struggles with damage a lot without Dolphin Bond. And Jungle Flipper is not as good without Dolphin Bond. Basically, it's only just like a catapult monster if it doesn't have it. So yeah, there's a few, you know, bit of give and take with that stuff, and you have to be careful running them, and they're not like quite the same as the Garden Fairies, which were, you know, a nice collective group. But of these, I would say the key ones are the water one. It's generally just a good monster, and it has the Diamondoids in it, which helps the strategy work. You know, your strategy here is tanky monsters, so having protectors in there is very nice for that. The Earth one has the most unconditional sweeping, so that is kind of key to the strategy, because when you don't meet killer weaknesses, you need to be able to still deal with the enemies, and Jungle Flipper can do that. That is your kind of sweeper there, and it's also got the highest defense of the group, when it's then also buffed defense too. The Fire one, I would say this is more of a key player than people will make it out to be. If you can open them up to stun at all, which, bear in mind, a few of these monsters can actually do that very well, then you can stun control with the rocks that you're making. So if you have other monsters creating rocks too, which is the next key player, is you want other monsters making rocks to really make this work as a long-term strategy, so you don't just run out of rocks. The Fire one can really help you control the battle with Stun Grenade by spamming that. So that's them as a whole. We're now going to talk about the three that were new this year, and take a look at what they're doing. So first is Jungle Flipper. So as I was just saying, this is a really tanky monster. It's got a high defense. With the defense boost, becomes super tanky, and it also then does enough damage with dual throw. So this can either dual throw for getting two enemies, or raw catapult to do a raw attack that's also piercing to kill any enemy of your choice. Defang also becomes an option. Without the Dolphin Bond, this is not a particularly damaging move because it's got low attack, but with Dolphin Bond, it can then kill things no problem. So it has a killer move, it then has these two unconditional killing moves as well. And Soul Shield you're probably not going to use. Enemy Accelerate, useless with the Dolphin strategy, but it does create two rocks itself, and then do some powerful stuff. If you're using Dolphins, this is probably the one you want to keep alive, because it is your kind of go-to sweeper that will get the job done. The next one is the Holy Dolphin, Dolpharial. So this doesn't have the Dolphin Bond, but it does have max defense and shield entrance with poison immunity, so that shield won't go away to poison either, which makes it tanky. So this one is probably going to do just about fine, as the other Dolphins do in terms of tanking. The only issue is it's got Chrono Weakness, but it has some very nice moves. Last Mercy will kill something kind of unconditionally, just gives it a turn, which is a bit iffy in PvP. Double Dark Bane, nice killing move. However, what this can really do is it can manipulate the battle to push enemies out of play, give turns to teammates. Fast Forward is like a kind of like a weaker give turn, but most of the time will work as a give turn. They are stun immune, these other Dolphins, because they got the Dolphin Bond, so they're not going to be stunned out of play and really needing pulling in from a long way. So Fast Forward should give them a turn, and then you can also revive one of your dolphins next in line on 50% HP with the secret skill. So this is kind of your dolphin support monster that I don't think enough people play in dolphin setups. I do think it's quite good, especially if you've got it properly potted, so those moves are fairly quick, and it can just help control the battle in doing whatever you need it to at that particular time. The last dolphin to talk about is Dolphoon. This is the storm one, and this is really nice for the dolphin setup because when used with the other dolphins, it really has to be used with them. It then does enough damage to kill with Retribution. Retribution's only 100 seconds. It's a slightly weaker version of Retribution, which is why by itself it really doesn't do enough, but with the others it does. So it can accelerate them, which is quite nice, and then otherwise just kind of kill enemies as monsters die off. Yeah, it's reasonable, it works in dolphin strategies, but it's not like your top dolphin that you're really happy about. It just gets the job done, and it's tanky because it's got the Dolphin Bond passive along with good defense. So the third and final cycle to talk through this year is the Crystal Worms. We almost always get a super epic cycle each year. This year did not disappoint. These are really fun. So let's talk through the moves. The first move is Crystal Worm Feast. So this kills a fellow Crystal Worm and halves the seconds of all the moves, because all the moves are really high seconds. They are 300 seconds Void piercing moves. Void meaning they ignore the revenge, and then piercing obviously you know. So these are really powerful moves, but at 300 seconds it's way too much. Bear in mind you will have them +9 because they're super epics, so it's like 255 seconds, but even so, that's way too much. So they're all stun and poison immune, which is very powerful, and you can't target them with anything, so you can't give turn to them, which, you know, means that it basically stops them from being abusable in various ways, which I really like, because I think there are cycles in the past where they've been hit and miss for various reasons, but like, for example, the Thugs, which have stun, poison, and sleep immunity, they basically don't get used by themselves. They get used with one-on-one because it's so abusable to just take advantage of that sleep immune by using one-on-one with it. And these would be way too abusable if you could just give turn to them, because you could then, you know, if one of them, say, has a void piercing move that can kill anything, you just use that, you then give turn to it, you can do it again. It's a stun and poison immune monster. If they were sleep immune, you just use them with one-on-one. So I think they did a brilliant job of designing these in a way that isn't abusable, but still very powerful. And then lastly, they're all tanky. They all have full defense stats, which means that they do survive, even though they're super epics. So they're kind of split into two categories here. The Fire, the Holy, and the Water one are very similar, and then the Earth, Shadow, and Storm ones are in their own category. So the Fire, Holy, and Water, I would say, are the better ones. They have Blood Fury rather than Bloodthirst. They all have a Heal Revenge. The other ones have a Purify Revenge, basically. And then they all, the better ones, have a very low condition on their Void move. So they can pretty much kill whatever they like with it. Whereas the other ones, they have, it's either a certain element that they kill or a certain killer weakness that they kill with their Void move. However, the first ones are low speed, they're slow, and the other one, the worst ones, are high speed, they're fast. So that's the kind of balance you have going on here across the 6 monsters. Basically it describes them all pretty well. And in terms of gameplay, how they work out is use a Void move with one of the fast ones if there's a target, and then you will feast it with a different one, which will then mean that the Void move on the one which you used for the feasting becomes very, very fast, because with the half seconds, you know, it's from the 255, it doesn't quite work out as half of that, but it's about like 135 seconds, I think, 136, and that's a far more playable move. And then after that, well, then you've got 2 kills with it, so the Bloodthirst works. Or if it's one of the other ones which has Blood Fury, well then you just do the Feast move and then you can Blood Fury. The Blood Fury is boosted by, I think it's like 60% or something, I can't remember exactly. But basically it's powerful enough that it can actually one-shot things quite well. Just the really tanky things can't get one-shot by it, which is very impressive for a super epic. So yeah, you Void, kill things, and then you want to feast the ones that have been pushed to high seconds from Void killing, and then you try and end up with about 2 left over which have their blood moves charged, and then they can be super fast sweepers. It's only 59 seconds on their Blood Fury or Bloodthirst, and they're stun immune and poison immune and got high defense. So they can end up being ridiculously powerful sweepers that are really, really good after you've used these void piercing moves to kill off some monsters with, the crystal worms you've then sacrificed. So these are like a really nice spin on the Thugs, where the Thugs want to also sacrifice each other for benefits, but they kind of have to like balance doing that with using the moves on those monsters to actually get some benefit as well. Here, it's all benefit. You just grab the kill with a monster, feast it, and then you've got like a really powerful sweeper ready to go. And it doesn't matter if like you get left over with one, as opposed to like the Thugs, which can get really messed up by that. So yeah, they're really hard to kill, and they're very powerful if they get going. However, they're also very easy to disrupt, and that's the thing which keeps them in balance. From a personal standpoint, I've used these a lot, and I would say against weak teams, they thrash them. They are super good against any weaker players in the game. However, against strong teams, those teams tend to have a bit of disruption, or just some low condition sweeping. They're able to kind of kill a couple of these, which means they struggle to get going. Any repulse is brutal because it resets their kill count. It means they're no longer sped up, that kind of thing. So they can be left on the battlefield without doing a feast on something, and then just have a 300-second piercing move, which is like not good enough. So they can be killed off like that, but they can be disrupted like that. They can otherwise just be killed off. I mean, you have to telegraph things by like going, okay, I'm feasting with this one, so clearly this is the one you need to kill. And if you kill that one, well then the other ones, they haven't feasted, so they're not good. So it's, it's very easy to disrupt if you know what you're doing. So in terms of which are the best ones, I've kind of already said it. It's those ones with Blood Fury. They're all slow, however they are more the key sweepers, because what you hope to do is you have the fast ones find a target, they do the void kill move, you then feast those with the slow ones, and then you have the Blood Fury charged on those ready to go. That's how you hope it lines up, so those slow ones you're hoping will be the ones that are your sweepers. The Shadow one and the Storm one are the other two which I think kind of really have a place in it. The Earth one is the only one which I would say you could actually just go without. But yeah, the Shadow one is very key for removing a protector. So the front line I'd actually suggest, if you were to use Crystal Worms, would be to use the 3 slow ones plus the Shadow one. Because those 3 slow ones are the ones that you really want to get going. You want them there on the battlefield, you want their unconditional sweeping and stuff. But the Shadow one you need to remove Protector with, because if there's a Protector in the way, then these conditional void killing moves that like can want to hit a certain target can't hit that target because a Protector will be in the way. So the Shadow one is very important to be there to remove that, for you then to do use the other ones to take out the other things. And the Storm one is very useful outside of the front line because it's fast. It can come in and it can do the Slayer break, and then you just remove it with one of the other ones. So it's good for like coming in, doing that, and then lining up for a feast for another monster. Whereas like the slower ones, you can imagine they come in, you kind of want to use their 300-second move to grab a kill before you feast them, but if they're slow, they're not going to get to that before you need to get, be doing something with your monsters. So the fast ones are good for that, and the Storm one in particular is very good with the Slayer break, because you can imagine as well, next in line you're hoping something would have died at that point, which means an enemy probably has a kill, so you can get rid of that enemy with the Slayer break. And otherwise, to help support them and make them work, I would say you do want some control or protection for them once they are charged up, because ideally you want to get to the point where there's a couple of them that are really powerful fast sweepers, and at that point you don't want to lose them. So having some protectors in there, what I personally do is a stun lock with that, so I kind of use them to open the enemy team up to stun, and while doing so charge up a couple of them, and then I do a stun lock on the remaining enemies and just kill through their team with the 1 or 2 that I have charged up. That's very effective. So that's a big overview of how to use crystal worms, and how they all fit together, which ones are the key ones, all that kind of stuff. I'm now just going to very quickly go through the 6 monsters so you can see their movesets, but we're not really going to talk about them in much detail there because I said it all just here. So first we have the Earth Crystal Worm, Viridis. Like I said, this is basically the weakest one. because its killer moves, or its void moves, are for poison or for earth monsters, and like, yeah, that might come up, but you can't really guarantee it coming up. I definitely, this has been my sweeper, it's done well at times, but it's not as good as the other ones. The fire one, this is one of the better ones. This is the one which people will often target first, because I think it was the first one that came out, and they all know that it's got Void Fastbreaker, which is basically just a unconditional kill on anything. So they all get scared of this one and they go for it, and the other ones are just as good. So yeah, this one often dies first, but it is actually very good because it's got both Shield Breaker and Fast Breaker. To be honest, you don't need Shield Breaker because Fast Breaker does the job on anything. It already pierces the shield. But yeah, very unconditional sweeping, low speed, and it's not the slowest. So you can sometimes use this as the void move, and then you feast it. Ideally, though, you do want to feast and then do the go for the Blood Fury. But having this unconditional sweeping is very nice for when it's set up as well, because sometimes you won't want to just keep Blood Fury, and sometimes there'll be a monster that has hold ground or something, and here you can then switch to do the Fast Breaker for like 130 seconds or so, rather than the Blood Fury for that. So yeah, nice sweeper for the group. The other thing I want to say for this is I forgot to mention the Crystal Worms were actually art done by someone in the community, a guy called Interference. If you don't know him, one of the loveliest guys in the community. He's really liked by a lot of people. Really nice guy, does some cool artwork, and he did the middle form monster of this one. So this was the original artwork he did, was the second form of Crystal Worm Rosius. And then what they did is they actually turned it into, they did a first form and a third form from that art design, and then they did the colour changing for all the different Crystal Worms. But this was the one, if you want to see it. It's also on on the forum, the original artwork that he did, but it's almost identical to what they ended up doing, which is pretty cool. So the next is the Holy One. So this is another one of the better ones. This is actually the fastest one of the Crystal Worms with Blood Fury. So I quite like it for that reason. It's quite often the one that will do the feasting first, because you'll use the faster ones or whatever to with their void move. Then you feast with this, and then Rosius and Corellius, which are the slower ones, can then perhaps do their void move as well, because maybe you'll still need to kill something at that point, and that will then help Purpurius, if I can say that actually. Purpurius? Yeah. Get to its next turn to do Blood Fury. But yeah, its killer moves on Chrono Killers, Chrono Monsters and Hold Ground Monsters. So Hold Ground Monsters is the, very low condition, but Chrono Monsters also very common. And so it's the fairly low condition moves with the Blood Fury as well. One of the better sweepers on it. Next we have the Shadow one. This, like I said, is the key one for taking down Protectors. So it's got the Wall Breaker on it. That's what you're using to kill the Protectors. Otherwise, it can get Holy Monsters. And it's the slightly less good one with the Bloodthirst and the Ascension and stuff, but will sometimes do the job. Most of the time you'll use it to get rid of Protector, and then you'll just feast on it. That's how it works. And then we have the Storm one. So this is the fastest Crystal Worm. It's the one with Slayer Break, so that comes up quite a bit when it's further back. Comes in, gets Slayer Break kill, then you feast it. That's generally how this one lines up, and really helps the strategy work well. And then lastly we have the Water one. So this is another one with Blood Fury. This one, I said earlier, just a minute ago, on the fire, how people often target the fire one because they're scared of that one more than anything else. The Water one is the other one that's just as good. Void Vengeance is so easy to charge, especially because you're already feasting the other Crystal Worms. You kind of charge it yourself, and so it's very easy to use that. Even by itself it works nicely, where you feast a teammate, and then perhaps Blood Fury won't actually kill what you want to kill, but Void Vengeance will. So you can it's a great sweeper. So yeah, this is one of the better ones too. However, it is the slowest, I believe, but that actually lines up quite nicely with the fact it has Vengeance, because you hopefully would have feasted on something beforehand. So Void Vengeance is almost always charged when it first gets a turn, so you can kill then anything you want. So yeah, great monster there. And that rounds up the Crystal Worms. So now we finally get to the actual fire section of this video. I realise at the time we're like 40 minutes into this video. I'm sorry that it's going to be a long one. But yeah, here we go. So fire monsters, what we got this year, we got 5 new mythics, 5 new legendaries, 2 of them being like shared monsters with other colours, other elements, and 4 super epics, and 3 0 to 4 star monsters. There are a lot of fire monsters which came out this year. Fire got a huge amount of support. It'll be quite fun to go through them in a second. But fire as an element, it has the most full attack monsters, the fewest high defense monsters of all the elements. It is the aggressive element, super aggressive, and it also has above average speeds and a lot of enemy accelerate, so it tends to be very aggressive, very fast hitting monsters. That's how fire has expanded on. Originally, I think it was like 2 years ago when I first came out with the series, and I was talking about fire and how it doesn't really have a cohesive strategy and everything. They have given it a little bit more of an identity over the last 2 years, and it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of fans for it, I know. So in terms of types of monsters in it, there's lots of dragons, rocks, and some demons. That's how fire is. So let's have a look at the themes of the element. I'll briefly go over these. I don't want to spend too long. I want to get to the monsters themselves. So poison is what fire's known for very well. So there's a few monsters on the left there which have poison as like a minor aspect of them, not really what they're doing. But there's 6 monsters here which are mass poison, and what I mean by that is that they poison a lot of monsters very easily. So we've got 1 auto poisoner, 2 chance auto poisoners, which are one's even a super epic that's wants to be in fire too, and then there's 3 monsters there. When they enter, they poison all enemies. So it's very easy in fire to poison all the enemies. And then if you look at the poison sweepers, we've got 6 poison sweepers, and in fact, you know, these can also poison enemies as well, but they're not the kind of same mass poison as the others. Yeah, there's a bunch of monsters here which like really push for poison sweeping, and you know, poison the enemies. Poison is a big strategy in fire. I put anti-sleep up in the corner because poison kind of counters sleep. You know, a lot of these do poison your own team or can poison your own team, so it does help quite a bit against sleep. Actually, looking right in the middle there, the super epic, which I cannot remember the name of right now, the chance auto poisoner that also has insomnia and poison gas, that just by itself can counter sleep, and it's a link fire monster, so you know, really pushes that, and gives me a reason to say anti-sleep. So the next theme we have is link fire theme. Now this is kind of something I touched on and joked about a year or 2 ago, but it really has become a thing. Fire, more than any other element, has lots and lots of link stuff, or stuff that wants you to play link. So in terms of what you're doing with link, well, on the left here we have some big support for it. Both these monsters have enemy accelerate and other support moves that make your fire monsters just super fast with what they're doing. Then we've got some 4 super epics actually, which they are link. They do sort of general stuff, not really pushing the link side of things. But yeah, they can, you know, they want link to do their things. Then we've got some strong sweepers. So these aren't necessarily link fire monsters, but they are fire monsters that you can use with the support of the enemy accelerator in a link fire strategy as being just very powerful sweepers. You know, with the enemy accelerate, a lot of these become very good. You know, Gorga Drake, stupidly fast with the sweep in there. Exocross also then becomes very quick with its sweeping. And then on the right we have link fire sweeping. These are the super good sweepers. A lot of them with very fast sweeping. You've got 3 of them with 70-second link blood moves, 2 of those healing it. Magmarinus is very well known with the link Slayer Bane All and high speed and hold ground. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. You've got Gallia Dragon as well. High speed comes in with link stun wave, and then some good sweeping from that. So link 5, very pushed. There's a lot of stuff here which makes you want to do link fire, and is very powerful in link fire. So that's a big theme in the element. And then, yeah, that was it for the themes. I'm not going to say any more. So let's move into the monsters. So first up we have one of the epics and below. This is Shiny Dreadgar. This is not that great. I've put it as notable for things, but like, to be honest, I wouldn't personally use this. It's just a fun variant on what they did with the normal Dreadgar, where they gave it Dire Side, which kills legendaries, and this one has Direcide X, which kills mythics. So you might use this in PvE in certain battles. You're probably not going to use this elsewhere. I have seen people use it just to do that one shot with the attack, and then they backstab it or something like that. You can use it as that, but personally I think there are better options for it. It's just a very cheap version of that kind of thing which you can go for. So very fun, but nothing too special in terms of power level. Next we have Romanoid. Now this is actually pretty cool. Only in PvP I would use it, not really any use in PvE, but what's cool about it is it's got Ascension All. So what this really does is counter sleep very nicely. Because it's a protector, they've kind of got to kill it off, and something like a sleep lock where they slept your whole team and to get out of it, it's quite, well, I say quite hard. There are a few ways to get out of it, but this is one of those ways which can really do it nicely because they have to kill it off, and then killing it off purifies your team. It also purifies the enemies too, so you don't want to use this if you're going with your own sleep or poison. But yeah, it can counter sleep and poison nicely. Repulse is pretty nice in PvP as well. Counters a bunch of monsters, really disables them, some of them. So yeah, pretty cool monster for use in PvP. I would like to see it used a bit more actually, because I haven't seen it that much since its release. Maybe in a meta where there's like a lot more poison and sleep around. Next we have another epic and below. This is Supershell. So I mentioned this in the last video with Lime, who creates Supershell, but we also have it as a normal monster. This was kind of fun on the, it was kind of a joke monster on the Easter egg hunt, where we had to go hunt the bronze shells in the different parts of the online screen, and then if we managed to find them all, we got Supershell. And so this is a, I was going to say super epic, it's an epic stun absorber that has stun martyr. So if it gets stunned out of play, well then it just actually dies off, which means that it's not left as dead weight. You do have to use this with plants because, you know, it needs the union attack. I don't think it's the best stun absorber. I think we got some brilliant additions this year for stun protection that you don't really need this, but it was nice that they gave us an epic one. There's actually, next video in the Holy One, there's going to be another epic stun protection option. They really went heavy on stun protection options this year, and I'm very happy about that. They did a good job of it. This is one of the slightly weaker ones, but it is an epic, so you know you can't really expect much more. So it doesn't really kill things with Union Attack. It's fine, it does good damage. You've got to use it with the plants, which plants are almost all in Earth, so that's what you're really going for here. It can help Lime out as well. If you're using Lime, you can have a Supershell in there as well, and boost her without her having to make a Supershell herself. So yeah, quite cool monster. Got Purify as well, which is pretty nice. Now we move on to the super epics. Atlantean, Shiny Atlantean. This is so good. This really pushes Link Fire again. So it's high speed with Dreamy Entrance and Stealthy Entrance. Stealthy Entrance is important because it's got Sneak Attack, so it can kill something with that. But it's not like kind of the main thing for it. The main thing here is the Dreamy Entrance with Link Purify Mist at only 100 seconds. That's great support. Also 70 seconds heal everyone with the Link Salvation. In the Link Fire team, this does a lot for helping you really get control of the situation. Putting an enemy to sleep and then having the option to heal or purify and stealth your team is great. And then it can be a bit of a sweeper from the Kinslayer and Sneak Attack. So yeah, very strong monster. Should see a lot of play in Link Fire teams, I think. I have seen people playing it, so I'm happy about that. Next super epic we have is the Crystal Worm Rosius, which I covered at the beginning. You'd only use this with Crystal Worms, so there's no point talking about it here. Just noting that it was one of the super epics this year. Next super epic is Shiny Nashjaw. Now this is not that great. The original Nashjaw is a Link Earth monster that wants to summon things and then does catapult. This is not a Link monster. It has this weird kind of like adding something next in line and then throwing it, which there aren't really many monsters in the game which do that. Like there's a couple in the game with some form of enlist, which you could use this monster with perhaps. There's also the Mythic, which I think is called Persephia. I can't remember her name exactly. I think it's Persephia. She creates rocks next in line and then throws them. So maybe it will come out as an archetype in the long run, and maybe this will then kind of fit with that. Throw next is faster than normal throw, but generally speaking, that archetype is kind of naturally bad because it has to line up properly. It's not just like the normal throw where you create a bunch of rocks at the end of the team and they're good to go at any point you can throw them unless someone knocks one of your monsters to the back. This is like they need to be there at the right point, and if your opponent has killed it and then like there's a real monster next in line, you can't throw that really, and so it's a bit awkward. The damage also is not good enough with this low attack. It would need to be a full attack monster to do it, so I don't really think there's any use for this monster, but in the future it may become a bit of an archetype that this could perhaps fit into. Now we have the last super epic that came out this year, and it was Pyramid Golem Lavamid, which, if you're watching this at the time of release, you'll probably be surprised that it was in the last year, because it probably feels like a long time ago. This came out just after the video I did last year, which covered all the Pyramid Golems except for this one. So it has to be used with the other Pyramid Golems, so unfortunately you can't get a proper idea of how exactly it plays into it. Basically, this is kind of one of the filler ones. It's not as good as some of the others. Some of the others have really good sweeping moves or really good control stuff. This has high speed with stun pulse, which is quite nice. It also has piercing water, which, you know, looks good on the face of it, but it tends to get a bit stuck because if it's not loaded and there's not like a high priority target to load, only having Time Crush is not very good. The other monsters, the other Pyramid Golems have a lot better stuff. I find this one tends to get a little bit caught out, and if you ever face Pyramid Golems, this one is the one you should leave alive, because it doesn't do much by itself. So yeah, it can also mess things up because of the Poison Revenge. There is another one that wants to sleep enemies, so yeah, they can kill this and counter the sleep that you put on them. But for the downers on it, it's still very good. You can see in the tier list I put it S+ in PvE, S- in PvP. The Pyramid Golems are very strong, and in PvE this one's actually really good because the piercing water kills enemies very well, far better than the other moves on the other Pyramid Golems. So it's quite key in PvE, but in PvP it's one of the more filler ones that's good, but nothing that special. So yeah, let's move on. So now we move to legendaries. The first one is Abyss Soldier. I can never say that. Poseidon, which I'm going to talk about in the water video because it's both fire and water. You can element shift to choose which one it is, and this video is going to be long enough already, so let's talk about it in the water video. The second legendary is Garden Fairy Hibby, which I talked about earlier, so I will talk here briefly about using it outside of Garden Fairies, and for that it's basically a poison monster with a piercing retribution if it's still on high HP. And so for that, it's quite good, but I would say, generally speaking, other poison monsters offer more. This has 100-second solo Poison Eater, which is quite nice, but at full attack stats it kills kind of the squishier legendaries. Anything that's tanky it won't really kill, and then when it comes to mythics it won't really kill any mythics properly. So in terms of damage dealing, even though it's quite fast with the solo Poison Eater, it's not amazing. It's basically that Vigor Vengeance that you're looking at, and so if an opponent puts this onto low HP, it doesn't do a whole lot. So for that reason, I think it's generally quite bad outside of Garden Fairy teams, and in them it's also a little bit iffy because it's mainly about that healing entrance. It doesn't offer quite as much as the others. But that said, if someone leaves this alone, Vigor Vengeance can work really well, so it depends how it lines up in the battle, whether it does well or not. The next legendary we're going to talk about is far more exciting. This is Magmagund, and this is a Link Fire monster that's very powerful. Surprise, surprise! It's the General Trend in Fire. So this does a whole lot. It's got really high defense and two passives that are both very powerful: Stun Martyr, which is the better stun absorb, and Auto Poison. Auto Poison, you should know by now if you didn't know already. It is very, very good for helping you just kill through enemy teams far more effectively. Just the number of things it counters for no effort at all, because it automatically poisons them, is exceptional. So the only downer on this monster, if there is a downer, is that it's low speed-ish. It's not even that low, but when it gets a turn, you can instant poison gas, ideally poison 2 targets, but even if it just poisons 1, it can still do reasonable damage. With the 100-second Link Double Poison Eater, you want to use this in Link Fire with poison things, and in that it supports it with the passives, being both stun protection and also poison the enemies. And if it doesn't get stunned, well then it just is one of the better sweepers, because you just, Link Double Poison Eater over and over. And then it's got Poison Immune Punisher, which is a really nice killer move. Only 70 seconds to do enough damage that actually one-shots things, even though this has low attack. and then Venom Bloodthirst is just an upgraded Bloodthirst, and you can even use that to poison enemies in a pinch if it really gets bad. Bear in mind that in Fire you've got a bunch of Element Accelerate monsters. This Link Double Poison Eater can become 65 seconds, and it's setting itself up because of the auto poison. This can be a crazy sweeper as well as doing a lot of support for Link Fire Poison, but outside of Link Fire Poison you're not really using this monster, so it's a really fun niche monster that does a lot within that setting. Next we have Mantiferno. Now this is very, very good, a personal favourite of mine. I may end up moving it higher in the tier lists over time. It's already at S in general and S+, S minus in PvP. This does a lot of cool things. The first and most important thing is Maneater. This piercing kills humanoids. It's the waifu killer. It's so good at countering the waifu, and the fact that we are getting more and more and more waifu mythics, and mythics are going to be far easier to get for free players and all the rest of it, they're going to be around in the game a lot. In a year or two, we're probably going to be wanting to use this monster a lot to take down those waifu, and it's going to be like a high priority must kill Mantiferno. So it also accelerates the monsters when it enters, and that's the other big thing, is when it enters it automatically accelerates itself and whatever's on the battlefield. So that Maneater is not just 100 seconds piercing killing, it's with +9 it's 70 seconds piercing killing. It's a super hard counter. Also accelerating your team, I would say the best way to benefit from this, I've played with it a lot, is you have some kind of good setup just before it. So I use it in PvE where I have Nova Drake and a couple of other good sweepers beforehand, and then the plan is I get them all set up, things are going and stuff, but something will die, and when that thing dies, well then Mantiferno enters, and then my whole team is set up and accelerated. Oh yeah, Leogeist is one of those monsters I have before it as well. So the crescendo hopefully gets going, and then suddenly it's accelerated crescendo that's actually one-shotting. So Mantiferno, very good to put after a good setup. It counters waifu. It's just a very reliable sweeper, because even if there aren't waifu, you can raw mark anything and then raw cornered snipe it, which, bear in mind also the acceleration here, you're not looking at 180 seconds for that killing, you're looking at far quicker. I'm always thinking about it at +9 because I have it at +9, but it's 42 and 90, so it's 130 second killing basically. Piercing killing, anything you want, and you only need one kill because then it has Blood Fury. So it very reliably kills things, it accelerates your team, it counters waifu, and it's also half stun immune and poison immune. Yeah, this monster does a hell of a lot. It's very good, got a really good moveset. The only thing about it is its low speed and low defense. So yeah, if you've seen my videos in the past, you would have known that when something's low speed and low defense, I'm just immediately it's got low speed, it's low defense, it's shit. But this one, I love. It's so good, it does so much that I'm not surprised it's low speed and low defense. So the next legendary is Pterygon. This I already talked about in the Earth video, so if you want to see about this, then check out the previous video where I talked about it at length. There's no point going through it again here. The Link Fire stuff is it's a Link monster, and it would fit into Link Fire Poison with the Link Poison Eater. But if you can just set it up with a rock at the back of the team and do Link Catapult. You can still use that Link Catapult, it's not exclusive to Earth, and that is a good way of then getting it kills for the Link Bloodthirst. So it works in both. It's definitely fine in Fire as well. It's just I talk about it in the Earth video. So now we move on to mythics. So the first mythic is Berry. This one is one that looks really good for a lot of people. I'm sure if you're newer to the game, you probably look at this and think it's insane. It's got double Blood Fury, but I would personally say I don't like this as much as some other mythics. I think it's good, but it's not exceptional. So what I like about it is it's got high defense and good speed, and when it enters it has an effect immediately with the Healing Entrance. Healing Entrance heals all your monsters by 50%, which is very useful in a lot of situations, and so it will come in and then it can get a turn at high speed, and then it can dual Slaybane. It can often get, a kill with dual Slaybane there, and then follow up with double Blood Fury. That seems good, except that the dual Slaybane is not that powerful. This does have low attack, so you kind of often want to swift attack boost first, and then do dual Slaybane, and then it gets a kill, and then it double Blood Furies. But basically, this is too much of like just a basic sweeper, because all it does is kill things. And I would say at the top level of things, and what you're really expecting from the top mythics, is a bit more flexibility or some kind of immunities or something to disrupt the enemy team, that kind of thing. And I don't think this monster does quite enough to get up there, but I do think it is very strong. Something that's interesting about it, that you wouldn't necessarily know when you just look at it, is the damage on Dual Slayer Bin and Assassinate is actually boosted. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think it's like 15% or something. But basically, after you use a Swift Attack boost, it does do good damage. It's more like a little stronger than a standard attack monster with Dual Slayer Bane, which means it pretty much does enough to kill mythics, just not the tanky mythics. And again, bear in mind, a lot of the new mythics and the way design is going is high defense stuff, so it may struggle a little bit to get kills with Dual Slayer Bane unless both targets have kills. So yeah, that's another kind of slight downer on it. But yeah, so it's a good monster, decent sweeper, just doesn't do anything too exceptional. The gimmick about ignoring stealth is not like a massive deal, because you know there are single target killers and all the rest of it. Stealth is not like a huge problem in the game. Next we have Botan Duji, and the more I've seen this, the more I love it. I think this is one of the best mythics to come out this year. I don't know exactly where I'm going to settle on it in the tier list. You know, all these tier list things, they are the monsters that came out the last year. I'm still trying to figure out exactly where they should go. So what really needs explaining on this monster is the Perfect Stance passive, both for the second form and the third form. So it says it increases defense by 1000%. However, there is a defense cap. It's the point where, roughly speaking, the defense is double what the attacker's attack stat is. Beyond that point, there's no difference in terms of the damage taken. So this gets Botan Duji to the defense cap, and that's it. However, it's not, because this passive has a hidden element to it, which means that not only does it get to the defense cap, it also reduces the damage taken by 80%. So if you know other monsters that go to the defense cap, and you know they get some ridiculous boosted defense, they take pathetic damage, well, it's actually 1/5 of that damage. In second form, it reduces it by 60%, so it's like 2/5 of that damage. But yeah, if Botan Duji is on high HP, above 90%, she tanks like hell. She takes so much damage. I think it's like 2.5 times what it would normally take a full attack monster, full attack mythic, to go below 90% HP. Sorry, to die, just to go below 90% HP. You have to hit it really, really hard to bring it below that. And to one-shot it is just like almost nothing one-shots it. You have to hit it with a piercing move to one-shot it. So yeah, this is a ridiculously tanky monster, and then its moveset is really good fun. So you do want to use it in Link Fire, especially in PvP, for the Link You're Grounded. Because it's got excessive force, that just one-shots the monster with hold ground, and so that really easily gets kills. It just chews its way through teams. Bear in mind also, like I've said, in Link Fire, you've got Enemy Accelerate. You can make this 45 seconds, I believe, to just kill through the enemy team stupidly fast. It's also got Slayer Stun and Time Strike, which Slayer Stun, that is pretty brutal. One of the things I really like about it, that I didn't really consider when I first saw this monster, is that you can repeatedly stun the same monster. So normally with like Stun Pulse, you stun monster and you only got one use out of it. However, with Slayer Stun, you can use it twice on the same monster to push that monster really far out of play. Not just like out of play for a good while, but like out of play for 400 seconds. So don't be afraid to just spam Slayer Stun to get things out of play, and then use whatever you like to just chew through the enemy team, whether it's Link You're Grounded, or you know, Time Strike on something. That something doesn't need to be on that high seconds to be killed by this, because it's got really high attack, and obviously the excessive force means that Time Strike does really high damage really easily. And then Bloodlust, the idea is you're hitting it back above 90% HP. So I would say you want to use this with other monsters that can heal it, because Bloodlust alone will not heal it by enough unless it's already over 90%. So like the hits are putting it down by a bit, but not below there. So you can just, you know, you only need to heal a tiny bit back up. In PvE, what I think is really interesting about this monster is you don't actually need to use it in Link Fire, because it's very easy to just skip behind a monster and then Time Strike it after it's used a move. The Time Strike will easily get a kill, and so you can grab 2 kills very easily like that. Slayer stun as well, gives you good control there, and then Bloodlust will heal it up, and well, the enemy team, they won't play like a human, so they won't be able to specifically target with a piercing move or something like that, so Bloodlust can actually keep it above 90% HP quite nicely. So this is a really, really cool monster for PvE. In PvP, in Link Fire, this can be very powerful. The only downside about it is that the moveset can get a little bit stuck in certain scenarios, but and also it can be countered by piercing. But outside of those, I think this is one of the strongest monsters to use in Link Fire. Next we have Mech Hydra. Now this, I think, is probably going to end up being underrated. It's a very new monster, so I haven't really got people's opinions on it too much, but I think this is a very good support monster for poison teams. Doesn't have to be Link Fire, just poison in general, because it's got the max defense, and the important thing here is the secret skill. So people will look at the moveset and think, oh, it's not the best moveset and everything, but actually with the secret skill on it, I do think it becomes very good. So the secret skill is basically just a guarantee kill when it gets a turn, only 50 seconds. And then what this monster does is it protects exceptionally well from poison, sleep, and stun. Got the stun bisector on there, no killer weaknesses, max defense, so it's very hard to remove this stun protection. And then it's got Purify with Insomnia to protect really, really well against sleep. So it can protect you from that stuff, and then otherwise it's got the Poison Touch, it's got Triple Poison Eater, so it can be a sweeper, and this is where you need to use it in poison teams, because they will ideally be doing the poisoning the enemies for you, for Mech Hydra, so it doesn't actually have to use the Poison Touch itself. It's just that then you can sweep with this as well, without any extra effort. And then it's also a good target for like giving turn to, because if you've got auto poison, well then the newly entered monsters are poisoned, so you can do Triple Poison Eater again, and it can be a really, really effective sweeper there. Eccentric Sting is the niche thing, but that doesn't matter because the rest of the moveset I think functions really well, and I think this has a very good role for poison teams that people should definitely utilise if they manage to get this monster and they like running poison. The next mythic to talk about is Onika. So Onika is one that I'm very down on. I may push it down in the tier list over time, I'm not entirely sure. The main reason is it supports legendaries, and who are the people who awaken a mythic who want to be running, some support for legendaries? Like, usually the people who awaken mythics have other awakened mythics, and they want to use those, and this really needs to be surrounded by legendaries because of the Roll Call move. So the Roll Call move is like a fast give turn, and it can only be used to legendaries and below. Give turn, one of the really powerful things about it is it can be used on, it gives you options. So like you've got the monsters there, and it's like whichever one is key for that moment, or most furthest out of play, or that kind of thing, that's the one you give turn to. If you're using this with mythics, then your options are going to be limited. It's going to be like 1, maybe 2 other monsters that you can actually give turn to. So it's like, will that actually give you benefit? So the Roll Call move gets a lot worse if you play it with mythics. Power Slash is not good enough. Concentrate, very niche. I can't really see use for that other than in certain PvE teams for certain battles, or maybe there'll be a setup where you want to use this with Concentrate. So the powerful moves on this and the reasons to use it are the secret skill and discipline. So the secret skill is like Banana Protein Shake, but on a teammate of your choice. Nice support, strong, but not quite good enough for just a monster alone. And then discipline is the strong move. This is like it's like a repeatable stun move, but not stun, so you can use it even if they have stun protection. It gets blocked by protectors, you do have to bear that in mind, but yeah, it's nice for controlling the enemy team. So what Onika does is pretty much just slow down the enemy team by kind of slowing down yours. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it is fine, and I have to pay respect to the power of discipline. It is a good move, but overall, I do not think this really fits into the game. Like compared to, say, Mech Hydra, which I just looked at, that people underrate. But like, I can really see a role for that in a team. Onika, I struggle to see where she actually fits. So the next mythic and final mythic of this video is Savannah. So Savannah, this I really quite like. It is a backbite monster that tends to work very well. You do have to have a target for backbiting, pretty much. But if you do, then she can shield herself, heal herself up, she's got hold ground, and then she can Void Blood Fury and be a sweeper. So she's kind of a backbite monster that's easily a sweeper, a much better version of Geomagnus really. She doesn't have the stun immunity, but countering revenge effects is really useful, and that she does this with all of her moves. So yeah, this monster has a role. It's not like exceptionally good, but I do think in PvP it is quite a strong monster. Ferocious Revenge, and on the second form, if you're confused at why this isn't just Payback Revenge, this version of it doesn't give a weakness to Payback Killer. So Savannah cannot be killed by Payback Killer, which is like the anti-death revenge move. Ferocious Revenge is basically a guaranteed kill. The second form has a version of it which doesn't kill buffed monsters or things with like the defense buff on it, or like the tankiest water mythics basically. So it's pretty much as good, but the final form has the slightly more guaranteed version of it. So yeah, cool backbite monster, quite a good sweeper. Fits into teams in that way. Just don't expect like it to be some crazy super powerful mythic. It's just solid. So now we move to section 3 of this video, where I'm going to talk about the power level of the new monsters and where they fit. So the notable additions from this year, we got 4 new monsters for Link, which I raved quite a bit about these monsters. I think they're very strong. Link Fire is so well supported and so powerful. Almost all the best fire monsters are Link monsters. So if you're going to play fire, you tend to play it as Link. Anyway, so all 4 of those are very good. There's a couple of them for poison, one of them for sleep, one of them just generally, very well supported all round. We've got the anti-waifu monster as well. This one is a big one for the future, especially I think 2. Just a very good sweeper that is going to counter a lot of what people are doing. I don't know if people are going to try and build around this in the future, perhaps, to try and counter what the meta is, but we'll see. And then Mech Hydra, I think this is interesting for the fact it's poison support. I think it does a lot of really good stuff for poison, so I look forward to seeing this in the future. I think it's, of the unique things to pick out from this year, I think Mech Hydra is quite cool in that way. Magma Gund is also poison support, but Mech Hydra doesn't require the link, it's just poison in general, supporting that. So this next screen, you would have seen it in the last video too. This is the kind of general tier list entries, which, bear in mind, this is not an exact example of power level, but it's a fairly good representation of it. And Fire has kind of above average. You can see they're pretty high here. Fire got amazing support this year. The mythics for PvE were not so good. You can see there's only one standout there, the rest are quite low. But for PvP, they are solid. Onika I may pull a bit lower in the long run, but they're all above average really. And we've got Burden Duji there that is very high, and I've only kind of knocked it down to S- really because it's Link. It could be perhaps up there at the top. The legendaries as well, very solid. We've got some high up positions in the tier list, and then super epics. They're always quite high anyway, but we did get a couple of really good additions there. So overall, very high on the tier lists. Fire got the most support of all the elements this year, and yeah, very, very strong. So for the fire lovers out there, this was a great year, and it'll be slightly more disappointing looking at the other videos of this, but this one was a big one anyway. I hope you got through to the end of it and that you've enjoyed me talking through all these monsters. The cycles and the fire, do let me know if you liked the style of this. I think this year was actually quite a bad example of me doing the cycles in this video, because fire happened to also get the most monsters out of all the elements, so this did end up a lot longer than I intended it to be. But yeah, do let me know what you think of me going through the cycles. Especially for the crystal worms, I felt like I did actually manage to explain how they work quite well. I don't know if I did quite as good job on the garden fairies and the dolphins, but let me know on that. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.